I was a YouTuber and I did a Halloween summoning livestream. I was a YouTuber who dealt with the paranormal, horror, legends and creepypasta. I opened up my channel about 2 years ago, but without receiving any feedback. After the first videos, I took a long pause, and later I started again with a new format that was very famous in that period, even if it still is, the evocations of urban legends. I often watched them in the evening, and they were very convincing, except for a few. I had doubts about them that went out of control when, on some occasions, the writers themselves revealed to me to be false. The atmosphere of those moments died out soon after. I had to continue my project, so I went back to work. I was bitter, but at the same time a little reassured, since I could have been in danger. I started like all the other channels, to get used to it and have time to promote my videos, given the new idea that had come to my mind, doing live streams. It took me a considerable amount of time to be able to have viewers. In the end, I managed anyway, with a result of about 2,000 each. It's not much, both in general and for the theme, but I was satisfied. Before there were way less. Once the preparations were completed, I decided to rest and reflect on how to set everything up. But looking at the phone, I realized I had to hurry. It was the 30th of October and it was evening. I moved to the sofa with my laptop and searched for creepypasta rituals on the internet. I found nothing, except for the usual ones, some which I've already done. The next day I was desperate. I didn't know what to do. The hours were passing and I was afraid of losing the opportunity. Around 11 PM I started the live streaming. I decided to improvise, to make everything up. I opened the living room door, while the bathroom door I had decided to keep closed, to create even more atmosphere. I placed my setup on the sofa, then sat in a chair next to the table, and started to do some introduction, before taking 2 candles from the room. I placed one at the bottom of the table, one at the other end, then turned off the lights. They didn't light up too much, but I could still see something. I stared at the door for 10 seconds. I kept my eyes closed for as many continuing, like that, for a while. I turned to the couch and when I looked around, I noticed that nothing had changed. I was hoping that the lights would have hyped the audience. I had also created an audio silent at first, with sounds that would suddenly pop up. I could not explain the reason for the absence. I had tested them several times, since it was my spare tactic, designing for similar occasions. So, I tried to improvise another one as I started to turn on the light. A humanoid shadow had appeared at that point. He was staring at me. Next, other shadows were instead next to the door. They seemed to be spying on me. I backed away, still looking at them, trying not to make any noise. The first pretended to take a step towards me. The others tightened and stretching. My heartbeat was going too fast. While their length reached an extreme level, they flew against the chandelier. The sound of the impact had immobilized me. I jumped against the wall, and in front of me, I saw 2 other shadows running from the bathroom door until they crashed against the wall at the back of the room. I walked with difficulty. I tried to get to the couch, to take the equipment and run away from home for a while, but as soon as I arrived, the shadow materialized in the chair, followed by another in front of me. Immediately after this, it disappeared, while the other remained there, staring at me, without even worrying about the equipment still active. Slowly, I managed to turn on the light and blow out the candles, but it was still there, motionless, following me with its eyes. I reached for the phone to help and noticed that it was about 2 minutes past midnight. No one answered. Before trying again, I heard an inhuman scream coming from the direction of the shadow. The room was shaking. I fell to the ground. I couldn't even move. Immediately afterwards, everything was back to normal. I could get up, but I was too agitated to do it, so I waited. I walked away from the living room and I talked with the viewers, hoping to feel better too. When I fell asleep and dreamed of the event again, even though someone else was in my body, he looked at me. And at that moment I woke up. I found myself in the living room. When I looked for the live on YouTube, everything had disappeared. All traces of the event had also vanished. Over the time, I began to feel more and more someone's presence and to lose whole months from memory. Meanwhile, I continued to increase, and also the symptoms. Now I'm starting to feel more and more absent. I feel like I'm about to disappear completely, and I'm rarely here. Recently, I've noticed that when I appear, I immediately get lost. It started to get worse this month. Maybe I will soon cease to exist. Sometimes I try to ritual again, but nothing happened. I will make the last attempt at the end of the month. Like that time to try to make everything right. I must be able to stay for a Halloween. It is my only chance. The Hooded God. I was living in the countryside of a mountain area. My house was isolated from the others and I never even owned a car. Sometimes I went out early to stock up on water at the fountain, not too far away. In fact, a few weeks ago, I woke up around 5:30. There was less light than usual. Looking from the window, I noticed immediately that it was rainy and it was cloudy. An unusual thing, but it has always been my favorite weather. After drinking coffee, I stayed in the kitchen to smoke a cigarette. I'd taken my time to wake up. I opened the door, grabbed an umbrella and headed off. It was cold, but not too much. It was calm and relaxed. It didn't take long. After filling each bottle, I was ready to go back. But when I looked up, I saw a shadow come from the trees to the side of the road and run ahead of me, disappearing into the opposite side of me. I turned around and another shadow appeared in the center. Negative emotions were all mixing up. I felt like I was suffocating. Meanwhile, a voice in the distance was repeating something. At first, I couldn't hear those words clearly, but the tone was raising. It was my name. My sight blurred. The umbrella slipped from my hands and I fell, an unbearable pain in my head. I fainted. I woke up suddenly. It was raining more than before. Around me were a small crowd walking in some stalls. I was confused. No one had ever organized anything over here. I noticed that my bottles were gone. I thought they were stolen by a passerby, but in reality, I was kind of hoping it. I stood there, thinking about what had happened before. I couldn't escape from that memory. I felt calm, but it was a calm different from usual. It was as if I was falling into the void, giving up to a twisted reality that dragged me more and more into the darkness. A hand grabbed mine. He was a man about 40 years old. All I can remember is that he was dressed in white and wore a hat similar to a cowboy one's. "Hi there! You don't look like you're from this place. May I help you?" "No, I was just filling some bottles of water at the fountain." "I have to go now?" "Thanks anyway," I replied. "What fountain?" He was surprised. "Don't worry, our products are very cheap. Follow me." "You'll like them," he continued, this time smiling and with an amused tone. "Choose as you wish. There are discounts today. If you buy 3 products, you'll receive an exclusive one." Every magician would pay all his salary just to have it. The situation had become even stranger, but now I was caught up inside it. So I went along. In the stall there were some yellow notebooks, long black ones on both sides, a dark blue coat, trousers and pointy shoes of the same color. Initially I just bought a notebook, but I ended up taking the rest. I don't know what went into me. At that point the man took a package from under the stall. "Deal done, here's your extra." They were common black glasses. I was disappointed. "Keep them, I don't want them," I replied nervously. "Haven't you ever heard of it?" His tone had become more serious. "Wear them." He'd thrown them at me, and so I did. "Look to your left and at the end of the path. Tell me what you see." "I see the same things," I replied. For example, he was sending some disturbing vibes. The trees and the fountain. At the same point he smiled at me, then pulled out another package from under the stall. I got confused. The product is this one. On the package there's written the Horror Maker. It should be the perfect solution for you, unless you're a human being. He continued with a slight laugh. I headed home. The crowd was now just a handful of people. Most of the stalls had been left behind me, and the rain was gone. As I went on, I noticed in front of the fountain there were 5 people dressed all in white. They were kneeling with their heads turned downwards. After a few seconds, some guys appeared. "Do you think he will hear our prayers?" they asked between themselves. "Who?" I asked, curious. They looked badly at me and walked away. I came back home. Negative thoughts and emotions continued to haunt me. I decided to take a blanket and rest. Ethan thought it was difficult. I had a strange dream. There were people like those from before. They were kneeling in the same place and praying. Immediately after, the fountain appeared, and the humanoid shadow above it. It had a pointed dark blue hood, and a long dress of the same color. I was shocked. He was pulling something out of his pocket. It was a black pointed wand, much longer than the pocket itself. It shouldn't have been able to fit in there. Immediately after he pointed at me, a beam of red light reached me. I didn't see anything past that point. I woke up, startled. I looked around and the small table moved. I had a panic attack. I waited, sitting by the window. I waited to calm my mind, to be able to think better, but I couldn't find a solution. I stayed awake until 7. I slept like this for 2 days. Then I had another paranormal things happening at home. I didn't know what to do, so I turned on the horror maker. It was very similar to a white smartphone, but it was square-shaped. I pressed some random buttons and got to a screen saying, "Create entity." There was one option called random. I'd pressed it several times during the day, but nothing happened. The next morning I lifted the shutters, but as I looked out I saw some sinister creatures. I ran around the house looking for a safe place, but from the other windows I realized that I was surrounded. I heard noises coming from the front door. I locked myself in the bathroom and tried to turn the horror maker on again. From white, it had turned black, and an error screen appeared. On the sides, there were some buttons, but I never discovered their function. Panicking, I pressed them all. When I left the bathroom, I checked the house again, and all the entities had left. In the following days, I remained calm. After 2 weeks, I had the courage to go out, to check the situation outside. I had to expose myself gradually. I didn't feel well at the idea of setting foot outside the door. The fountain was still there, but the rest was back to normal. I ran home. I was scared, fearing that everything could repeat. Later, I decided to go to live in Europe. I'd paid a very high price, but at least I secured myself a quick escape from that place. I started to sleep well again, but one of the nights before leaving, I had another nightmare. It was at the stalls. It was a lot more crowded than usual. They all had maps. As I walked, I saw there were many areas marked with red on them. I was confused, but I didn't have time to think about it. They all disappeared. The hooded being was in front of me, with its wand pointing to the sky, towards my left. The ray of light came out again. I couldn't see the end of it. A rain of the same color started falling from the sky, melting everything, including the people who prayed at the fountain. Droplets were going to hit me as well. It was 4 o'clock, almost the time I had set to prepare myself. I ran to the fireplace and tried to burn all the products, and it didn't work. I threw them out on my way. However, some still come back at night, wandering around the house. Contacts with these entities have been reduced, but over the time they've become more and more frequent. Sometimes I even see groups of people in the city dressed like that being, and others see the stalls with the fountain, usually in the countryside of the place that are less frequent, at night or early in the morning. Over time, I'm beginning to notice these details more and more in my world. I always hope that one day it will end, but I've never found a solution.